Welcome to this first video on the basics to live free and committed relationship. So for me, the first part is to make a distinction between the world of facts and the world of interpretation. And the stuff is, we haven't learned. So we usually don't make difference between facts and how we perceive them. And most of the time, how we perceive them in the way we speak and the way everyone speaks, we feel it's reality. And not seeing that distinction has intense consequences for us in our ability to make enlightened judgment. So, I will call it the world of facts, the reality as it is, the reality for a scientist, and B, the world of interpretation. It's how I see the world, how I perceive the world, how the world is seen by me. So A, facts, and B, interpretation. And let's have a little game. I'm going to say a sentence and you let me know if you think it's A or B. First sentence: viruses are dangerous for the human beings. A or B? New York is far from Los Angeles. A or B? For example, I'm 6'4", I'm a tall guy. A or B? Speed kills. A or B? In Montreal, the winter is really cold. A or B? $10 million is a lot of money. A or B? You left me. A or B? Pigs are dirty. A or B? Chinese have a yellow skin. A or B? Motorcycles are dangerous. A or B? Now look at your answers. And everything that I said was the world B, was an interpretation. Nothing of what I've said just now, and all the examples I've given were an interpretation of the world. If you want to go to facts, we can go it together. For example, viruses are not dangerous to human beings. No, only 0.000.2% of viruses can kill human beings. So 98 point blah, 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 blah are safe. They're just part of the world. Speed kills. No, speed doesn't kill. It's your lack of vigilance that might kill you, but speed doesn't kill. Speed, from a fact, will increase the length of the braking periods and also increase the intensity of the shock. That's it. But speed doesn't kill. Like motorcycles are not dangerous. You could say that you have less safety than a car. There is less structure to protect you in a motorcycle compared to a car. That's true. New York is far from LA. Depends from what perspective, from where. New York is closer to LA than Beijing or Paris. Paris, I'm not sure. But what is a fact is, I don't know, LA is 6,000 kilometers away from New York, or 5,000. I don't have the exact number, but unless you go to number, it is. It's hot. No, it's not a fact. It can be 25 degrees Celsius, it's 35 degrees Celsius, and it will depend. For someone who lives in Iceland, maybe 35 degrees is a lot. But for someone who lives in the desert or in Africa, in a place where it's really warm most of the time, it can be nothing. So the fact it's hot doesn't mean anything, factually. Numbers of degrees Celsius can tell you something. And for the rest, it's the same. None of that are facts. The stuff is we haven't learned, and most of the time we speak like that, and it's okay. Either because we haven't learned, or either because we don't want to put our energy into it, or we don't want to be that level of awareness. It's fine, but it depends on what you want to do. Because most of the time, and that's the issue, and that's why I made that video and I'm talking about that subject, is because of the third world, the world C, which is the world of decision. Most of the time, people make the decision not on facts, but on their interpretation of the facts, on hypothesis. And so you have the facts, your brain or your storytelling makes an interpretation, and from that interpretation, you make decisions. And so the decision will not be based on reality, on facts. It will be based on your interpretation. And that will lead usually to poor decision making. And the stuff is, when you've made that poor decision, then it will become for someone else a new fact. But that person won't see it as a fact. He will think an interpretation. And also it's a loop. And we're all like lost in loops. I can show you an example, a very simple example that we most of us probably know on dating apps or even like the first few dates. You go on a date, you have a beautiful evening, and then you go home, you send a message saying, hey, I had a lovely time. And you don't get an answer. And usually your brain will, oh, that person is not nice, he's not answering, or what an asshole, he could just say hi, and like, I hope you had a good time. And you will start making and telling yourself story about that person and what's happening. All you know, the only fact you have is you haven't received a message. That's it. Maybe his phone died. Maybe he left his phone in a pocket. Maybe you like sometimes to wait a little bit more time before sending a message. Maybe you need more time to be like, hey, do I really want to see that person again and send a message the next day? Or you send a message and it's not going out. It happened to me once. And then someone showed me the picture and it was like, she was like, hey, let's see one another this week. And I was like, hey, how you doing? I'd be happy to see you on Friday. And then Thursday I didn't have an answer. So I was like, hey, you still want to do something on Friday? No answer. And on Friday I was like, hey, what's going on? And on Sunday she was like, oh, I'm sorry. All the messages didn't go through to you. And she sent me an image of like all the messages she sent and me had nothing. So the only fact you have is I didn't receive a message. And it's very different to make a decision from that place of I didn't receive a message. Hey, I didn't receive a message. Did you have a good time? Because I had. Hey, I haven't received a message since I saw you. Is everything okay? Like, it's very different. It's like, what an asshole. I don't want to see it again. It's like, it keeps on building. Yeah, men are like that. They don't answer. Or women are like that, blah, 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 blah. And you make stories. And then your decision will be, I don't want to see that guy again. But you don't know what happened. Maybe one of his parents die or something happens. But that you won't know because your desire for your story to be true, and your story is only in your head, not in the factual world, not in the real world, will make you take a bad decision. Another example, it's a story in France was like, there's like plane tree kills. And that was like the headline of a newspaper. And because of that headline, the decision from the people and from the mayor household was to cut all the plane tree. But the plane tree didn't kill anyone. It's not like they moved on the road and it was like, and just like had people, did kill people. No, what happened was people weren't driving safe, or people were drinking too much, or people were not paying attention. And so instead of being like, okay, what's the real issue? It's not that the plane are a danger. It's the fact that people run or drive into them that is killing people. And you could have made other decision. You could have like dig a hole in each side of the road so car will fall down there. Or you could have put like 2 fence to protect. Or I don't know, make another decision. The fact is, instead of being like, yeah, people drove into plane and they die because of that, it was written plane tree kills. So if the plane tree kills, then let's kill the plane tree. Again, nothing to do with reality. Yeah, for example, I know also a story of one of my friends, and he grew up, didn't know his dad, and he always thought that he was abandoned by his dad, and he was struggling, and he really wanted to meet his dad, and he was like, oh fuck, I wasn't loved by my dad left me, blah, 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 and started telling stories about himself, about blah, everything. And one day when he was 18, he was like, okay, I'm gonna meet that person, I wanna meet my dad. And so he found the address and went and knocked on the door. And I was like, hey, hi, I'm your son. The person was like, what? I have a son? Like, but no one ever told me. So his reality was he was abandoned, not because the dad abandoned him, just the dad didn't know. And so his entire story and the way he built himself as a young man was based on a false story, on hypothesis. All he knows is he never met his dad. And that's all he knows. And the last example that I also really like was a little girl, and she was in middle school. Most of the kids were talking about that, the fact that their parents were getting divorced and they were fighting with one another, and they were like fight and stuff, and often the kid was like in the middle and being slightly bribed to like take a side or something. And with that girl, the parents just left amicably. and there were no fight, no nothing. And because she was not at the center of the attention, she thought that her parents didn't love her just because their parents didn't fight. So her story was like, the other parents are fighting, and they're fighting for the custody of their children. My parents are just happy divorcing, and they're not fighting over my custody. Thus, they don't like me. They don't love me. No, just you have healthier parents than the other one. That's it. That could be, it's even an interpretation, but might be a fact. Very different story. There is a way for you to talk about the way you feel reality. And that's the world A prime. It's, okay, I feel tall. I feel hot. I feel that LA is very far from New York. Like for me, it's the longest trip I would have ever done in my life. I've never done a trip that long. So it would be the longest. So it feels long for me. Or I'm afraid of speed, or I don't feel comfortable when speed is high. And that's very different because you're using your voice and your interpretation, and you're naming that it's you who feels that way, which is very different. And that's one of the base of being free and committed in a relationship, is owning what's yours and distinguish between what's yours and what's the other's. And that's the perfect next step for the next video.